We've taken the football all the way down the field. We're inside the 10-yard line, but we got to get it in the end zone to win. And that's kind of where we are right now. We're inside the 10-yard line, but unfortunately we're having new cases still every day, on average around 40 to 50. And we still have some of our residents in the hospital, some in ICU. So although we've made, huge inroads, we still need to continue to do what we know works, which is wearing masks and socially distanced, try to avoid large gatherings, and also to use good personal hygiene. But we're a lot closer with vaccinations are helping a lot. We're getting more vaccines. We've done over 100,000 in Hamilton County, and this week we just received the doses for next week, and we'll be doing about 15 to 16,000 next week. So the supply chain is becoming a lot more effective, which will help us, to eventually bring some normalcy back to our community. All of us in our lifetime have never experienced a pandemic, and health department's done, an outstanding job, and that's to put it mildly. We've had to hire over 100 people to add to our health department. They've done an unbelievable job. They've worked every day except Thanksgiving and Christmas since the 13th day of March of last year. And so, again, they're totally stressed, but they just seem to continue to keep their morale high. They know they're making a big difference in our community of keeping people healthy, whether it was testing and now doing vaccines or contact tracing and each and everything in between. That's been part of their responsibilities. But I couldn't be prouder of what our health department has accomplished and the leadership there with Becky Barnes. And so, again, we're not out of the woods, but they've done some unbelievable work there. They continue to do it, and that's what's gotten us to where we could actually see some light at the end of this tunnel.
Looking back, at what point did it become clear to you the scope of the crisis that was coming down on us in January and February last year?
Well, I was constantly in touch with the health department, with the administrator, Becky Barnes at the time, and Becky was obviously in touch with whether it was CDC, State Health Department, and getting constant updates, but it hasn't really hit here at the time. And a mayor that's also a considered friend of mine in Williamson County, Roger Sanderson, they were the first county, if you remember, in Tennessee. That's where the first case was. And actually the reality of when he was hit with that, and I heard about it or read about it in the news, I called him, and he was, obviously confirmed, yes, it's true, whatever. And I guess it became a reality at that point in time. It is here, and it's going to be something that's going to have to be dealt with, not only short term, but for quite some time. And I think it became apparent to everyone that you had to have a long range plan.
And how did you set about making that plan? Talk about standing up the task forces, but also again that state and federal assistance was jumbled, let's say, for a period.
Well, let me just say, the resources from the state have been, unbelievable. They've done everything we've asked for, we've gotten, and if they had it. You remember there was a shortage in masks, but when they became available, they made sure that we got them. Any shortages in testing kits, anything that we needed, they got those for us when they got them. But the states have been a great partner the entire time, and again, we tapped into them quite a bit. Locally, again, building those partnerships. We've had partnerships along the way for testing with people like SIMPA, with Shannon Stevenson's group, and then also with Clinica Medicos, Dr. Arnold, Dr. Metters. And then, again, as we mentioned earlier, the African-American pastors being able to get, a certain group of people with us. So all of this, in an effort to, try to get our arms around a serious situation of a virus that is highly contagious. And we all recognize that early on. And again, trying to get information out to the public of how to protect themselves. And as you remember, there was some confusion on the front end where, CDC and particularly Dr. Fauci had come out and said, well, masks aren't going to make a difference. And they came back and they said, no, masks are, really, they're effective. And one of the really important things, no one ever said, to this day, no one ever said masks were 100%. But what everybody's agreed on is they do offer some protection. And one of the things that's really ironic, what we realize now, and I don't want to jinx myself or anybody in the community, but we haven't had a flu season. And a lot of people would attribute that to the fact that, people are wearing masks and we're not spreading a lot of germs. So when I talked to our medical groups that we've had access to from the beginning, because as this started, obviously we set up a local task force. I have a different group of what I call an advisory committee, physicians, business community, and other people in the community that have a vested interest. And then also the state has a state economic recovery group, as well as the Unified Command under General Brower. And so, and the governor himself. All of them have been accessible to us to be able to make good decisions. And what we knew from the very beginning, this is where some of the confusion got as the story goes on, and is that when the federal government and the state government shut the economy down, as you'll recall, I think federal government did it for a couple of weeks, the state continued it for a couple of weeks past that. And then after that, coming out of that, the state government turned it over to county health departments. We knew it was really critical to open the economy back up as quickly as possible and as safely as possible, because what we had seen is unemployment numbers, skyrocket. We saw several small businesses going out of business. And so it became extremely important to me to open the economy. And then as we saw the numbers continue to kind of increase, it became very apparent in July, in order for us to continue to open the economy, everything back up, we were going to have to go to a mask mandate. Businesses, for the most part, wanted it. They wanted it because they didn't want to have to be the ones to tell their customers that you got to wear a mask. So they'd rather government be telling them that, although they wanted it, but they didn't want their customers to go to their competitors who may not be requiring a mask. I totally understood that. So we were able to kind of slow down, minimize the numbers of small businesses that have closed, and we were able to cut unemployment in half, which was really important to us. And if you look at today, our economy is totally wide open. The only restrictions we have in place is that in restaurants you still have to have 6 feet for social distancing purposes. So they're at about 75%. But all other businesses, even gatherings, everything is open, and the mask helped us do that.
For our area, we really did only face the medical emergency in June, July, August.
Mm-hmm.
After those 2 or 3 months of already being in crisis, having all the disruptions to life and business, depleting a lot of emergency resources.
Mm-hmm.
So could you please just talk about the pressure to reopen and to make trade-offs between economic needs and public health needs?
Yeah, well, it never felt like pressure to me. It just felt like it was a decision that needed to be made as a result of what we were seeing, what was going on with our numbers, the way that they were rising, what was going on with our hospitalizations, our ICUs. We never did have a crisis with ventilators, but we did not want to get in a situation where our own residents were not able to go to hospitals. We also, at the very same time, we knew that we had to keep the economy going. that was not an option to us, that we knew that how critical that was going to be. And because, again, people were losing their jobs, businesses, particularly small businesses, going out of business. So, we knew that during that period of time, and again, people had already made, there were a number of models out there that were talking about when this thing was going to peak. And, not that surprisingly, every model, and there was probably 5 to 6 of them I looked at, every model was wrong. And we're still, battling with it today, although a lot of people said it'd go away in June and whatever, and it reached out. But we also saw a pattern of every time we'd have a holiday, whether it was Memorial Day or 4th of July, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, we'd see an uptick. And we saw when it really got bad and serious with the hospitals was in November, if you'll recall, and in the first part of December. So again, constantly looking at these numbers several times a day. Again, consulting with a number of physicians, a number of businesses. I guess what a lot of people don't understand, it's the juggling act of keeping the economy open, getting schools opened on time. We were one of the few that were able to get our schools open on time in August. They went to school 84 days in the first semester. They were off for a period of time starting the second semester. They're back in school now. A lot of that, give a lot of credit to Dr. Johnson and his staff for doing that. But, what we do know is that, masks made a difference there. So, although I don't like wearing a mask, I do know that they've been impactful, and I do know that they're very controversial, and for some reason that I don't know, they've become very political. But our intent from day one was just to try to minimize the spread in the community and minimize the people that were dying. And we've lost to date 463 people in this community. And I don't know of anything else that's hit us that hard. When you look at some of the things that we measure every week, whether it's every year, whether it's homicides, vehicle accidents, or anything, nothing to the magnitude of what we're seeing or what we've seen in the last year. And so, there was obvious that action needed to be taken, and it was obvious that we were very limited as to what we could do to intervene. And part of that intervention was obviously the implementation of the mask mandate. And again, we do believe it saved lives and certainly helped, with the spread of the virus.
When you talk about being limited in what you can do as county government, and giving all credit to state partners and the community rallying around every response effort, what do you think was the real source or impact of the disinformation over the course of the crisis? And especially, what kinds of tensions did it cause within the state and local governmental community?
Well, social media, we live in a world now where, you can go on social media right now and it's out there, and there's so much misinformation about social media, and people will take, out of an entire article a line or two and say, see, and point to that and say, see, this says whatever. And it's simply taken out of context. And again, what I relied on the most and will continue is, what are these physicians saying to us? What is CDC? If you talk to physicians, they will still tell you the best source of information still comes from the CDC. And so, again, is the confidence that you have in the information you're getting at a state and a local and even a federal level from access that we have to these different groups. And the one thing that all of these groups agreed upon was that, know that masks were not 100%, but they would make a difference. And again, I point to the flu as an example, but because we'll never really know. We know we've had 40,000 plus cases, positive cases here in Hamilton County, but we'll never know whether that number would have been 60 or 1,000 or what it would have been had we not done the mask. So it's one of those things that that people will continue to argue. We heard all of the issues about that you're trampling on my liberties, you're trampling on the United States Constitution, and I can without a doubt say to you that was not the intent. That is not what was happening. And again, the government's involved in our lives every day, and the government, does have a role to protect us, whether it's, through traffic signals, seat belts, or, giving us warning about cigarettes or things of that nature. So I never really understood the liberties argument, and certainly the constitutional argument.
This is why I sort of foreground again I know we have very limited time, but this is why I foreground the forward-looking question of the disparities of impact, the way that the crisis, as much as it brought us together in some ways, also drove us apart. I know even just as of today, average home prices never went down. They're 15% higher now than they were a year ago. And considering the impact on local businesses, the severe toll on low-wage workers especially, that's kind of mind-boggling that in so many ways we do stand to benefit, in a sense, from the way that the economy is being reshaped through all of this. And what would be the impact on local politics, on our prospects for continued economic development with this kind of further inequality and division baked in?
Well, I think what we're going to see, Robert, I think this will be a case study for a decade or more. People are going to look back at this and judge. I would say every detail of what everybody did all over the country, and it's kind of a little unfair, but that's okay. I think we learned from what we did right, and we learned from what we did wrong. And I don't think any of us that are in a decision-making position think that we did everything right. Do we think we did some things right? Absolutely. We think that we did anything wrong. Nothing just jumps out at me right now. I think if anything, it was getting testing sites up more quickly or whatever. But we were doing the best we could with the resources we had. But I don't think we'll get anywhere in the country will ever get caught that way again. People will be much better prepared, knowing some of the shortcomings we had, such as testing and being able to put up sites where you can do the masses, because it's really important, whether it's vaccinations, testing, or whatever. So, there's lessons to be learned, and I think that they will be, but I also think that this really does set us up for, in the future, realizing, that it's important to keep the economy open. You have to learn pretty quickly how to coexist with it, because it will tear your county, your city, your state. It'll knock it to its knees when you got people out of work, and businesses closing the doors permanently. So I think that's one of the things that people will learn from this 10 years from now, that you got to be really careful about anything that you're going to shut down. And we were, once it became something was under our purview, which we never shut anything down. We weren't a part to that.
What do you think are our best prospects for recovery in the local economies for being less vulnerable when the crisis?
Well, to be less vulnerable for the pandemic, or to be less vulnerable for
if it was a major flood or a water outage, there's
yeah. Well, I mean, the difference between whether it's a flood or a tornado and the pandemic, there's a huge difference, because the others are easier to deal with. The pandemic, not only can you not see the virus, but when you have these surges or whatever, sometimes it's hard to explain until you get some good contact tracing done where they're coming from. But again, it's those types of disasters are really hard to compare. I mean, certainly the pandemic's an outlier that's so critical, so hard to get your arms around because it's so massive, and it impacts more people. Tornadoes are extremely devastating, and obviously we had one within a couple of weeks after the pandemic struck. But I mean, and we lost some lives there, and any life, we don't want to lose any life here in this county. But again, if you compare the two, they're so different, and they're different strategies, obviously, as well, of how to deal with them, and they're different strategies in how they impact the economy and how quickly it'll come back. But we seem to have done really well with keeping the economy going and keeping people working through both a tornado and at the same time the pandemic.
As you said, proven, again, the model for working together, for
Yeah.
rallying resources. When it comes to the health disparities that existed before this,
Mm-hmm.
and the impact on or worsening inequality in our local economy and the sort of landscape, what does recovery look like, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, I mean, we've all along the way, we've always looked at short-term and long-term to see, what we would be doing and how we deal with it. And we knew short-term we had certain issues that, if you recall in the beginning, testing was an issue. We had some serious problems in our minority communities, and we've had that with vaccines as well in the beginning, and we think that it'll, just like testing, we'll build that trust factor and people will start to participate. But in the beginning, it was a challenge to get people to participate. I think what the COVID has done, if anything, in helping bring our community together, it will be that trust factor at the end of the day, where if we run into other public health issues in the future, people have gotten to know and understand the health department and the other groups that we've been able to partner with. For example, the Clinica Medicos in our Latinx community, or if you're talking about our African American pastors that helped us with testing and now helping get people with vaccines. CARTA's been a great partner of bringing people in the minority community to our sites to get vaccinations now. So, what we do know is that we've been able to establish some really good partners. We've had, through collaborative efforts, to be able to stand up testing sites, and now we're standing up vaccination sites. And so overall, I mean, this is a great community to live in, great county to live in, because people come together during these situations. But there's always, the most important thing is you have to build and establish some trust. And I think we've been able to do that. And I think that's going to make us a better community in the long run, and also, with public health issues.
Obviously, for all of us who had some investment in that story, again, the civic culture, the public-private partnerships, it was never more in action than during those first weeks of the crisis in March when schools closed.
That's true, and it continues to be. I mean, if you look back, if you go all the way back to this time last year, coming up, the anniversary is on the 13th. If you look at where we were and the preparedness then compared to now, there's no comparison. when we didn't have any place to test. Other larger counties were able to test at their local hospitals, and ours weren't capable of that. And so in just 10 days, we were able to set up testing at the Baylor School. We talk about public-private partnerships. We've established them all the way through this pandemic and continue
What role
to
did
do
the
it.
Baylor Lab really play, again, in making sure that even first responders and personnel and the county government for hospitals could get reliable results?
Right. What was really critical in the very beginning, we had people in the hospital that they didn't really know whether they were treating them for COVID or not because they hadn't been tested. We didn't have any means to test them. So what we were able to do, I received a phone call one evening from Baylor School where two of their scientists there said, "Hey, we can do this testing for you. We just don't have the license to do it. Would you guys be willing to license?" And so, got on the phone immediately with the federal government played a role in it. Former Senator Bob Corker helped. Congressman Flashman helped. On the state level, the governor was a big help to us, as well as our local delegation. And we were able to go through all that red tape in 10 days to get everything certified for them to be up and running. So what that did, that opened the door for us to test, like you said, first responders, but just as important, it was able to, the people that were in the hospital were the first people that were tested to see whether or not they actually were positive for COVID-19, and so that they'd know how to treat them. And so that was really big, and Baylor did an unbelievable job for us for a couple of months or so. And basically what happened to us, we were doing, instead of a few hundred a day, we were starting to do well over 1,000 a day, and so we had to move to another site to be able to do that. But Baylor's still doing it today. They're just not doing it for us.
No, they identified the variants in the area.
Yes.
Looking forward still, I think it's part of the timeline of the past year. The protests feature prominently. And the most recent development is, again, there's an interracial group of pastors, I think, calling themselves Chattanooga Clergy for Justice, who are petitioning the sheriff's office, again, for more transparency and accountability. Mm-hmm. What is your view on the best way to move forward on that whole front?
Well, I'll say this. A lot of people have fought and died for our country to give people the right to voice their opinions, whether you agree with what they're saying or not. And I certainly support people's right to protest peacefully and to do it within the law. I think that's really important as well. But again, I mean, the fact that people were protested here or whatever is, again, their right to do so. And as I said, I mean, there's a lot of people that literally gave their lives so that, people like you and I can do that. And I just feel strongly about it. And there's a lot of people that's lost a lot of limbs to give us that right as well, and that are still with us. And I think they would all agree with the same thing, although, you might not like what someone's saying. Still, we have to be, very conscious and aware that people have the right to their opinions.
And how would you rate, or what is your view again on the transition under Sheriff's management of the Silverdale workhouse over the past year? What do you think are the issues that need to be addressed going forward?
Well, I mean, it's really difficult, and we knew it was going to be a difficult procedure because CoreCivic, who was operating it, had always had trouble hiring jailers to staff the Silverdale facility. The sheriff's got he's experiencing the same issues, but the transition has gone, I think, as smoothly as we could have anticipated. The only issue is being able to hire employees to work there, and I'll be, glad when he's able to do so we can get SROs back in school. No one's going to be happier about that than the sheriff. It always kind of amazes me when people are, are critical of the people that are responsible for it, because no one wants it to happen more quickly than whoever's responsible. So the sheriff's working, diligently to make that happen, and it's just that we live in a time right now. It's difficult to get people to want to be involved in law enforcement, given this last year, all the criticism, the numbers of people throughout this country that's walked away from those jobs, and here the sheriff is caught the time when he's taken on, more of those responsibilities and trying to find people to get them to start for the first time in law enforcement. It's very difficult.
A lot of teachers as well, the way the pandemic has affected the education system, obviously hiring signs.
Yeah, I mean, but our school system it's always been difficult to keep enough teachers. I mean, we got a large school district, 44,000 kids, and
what it makes me think of, and where I'm really hoping to contribute to a conversation going forward, especially for this community, again, is the need to sort of rethink or refigure our approach in a lot of different areas, and the pandemic has certainly made that crystal clear to a lot of people, and it's also made it more and more necessary to double down on our best options so much of the time. So as a final question, because I know you have to go, sir, obviously there's the municipal elections that just took place for the city of Chattanooga,
yes.
The oral runoff, and then the county election next year. What is your message to the community, to the incoming administrations, about our best options and about what is most important, again, to make sure that we are able to harness whatever advantages we may have in the new future?
Well, I mean, I think it's going to we're going to get back to normal eventually, and the priorities are going to continue to be about trying to grow this county with jobs, to grow it with the economic development. We've had a lot of success in the billions of dollars that's been invested here in our county with new and expanding businesses. That's going to remain important going forward. Again, to get us back to where we were, that if anybody that wants a job can have a job. I've always said that we've been down as low as 3% unemployment in the past. To get back there, again, we have work to do in education. Our students have, for all practical purposes, the disruptions they've had over the last year, it's going to be really critical that our schools have the resources to do what's needed to educate our young people. That's our public and private schools and our home schools. So again, I mean, we know that that's the way out for a lot of people that are in poverty. Again, we've been able to commit some good resources to give Wi-Fi and access to internet to some of our impoverished areas. As a result of this pandemic, that will carry on after the pandemic's over. So again, it gives our young people an opportunity to have access to learn. So, I'm extremely optimistic about the future. We're going to get back there, and it's just a matter of we get through these vaccinations. When we do, and when we're able to get back to some normalcy, then again, things will pick up. Although we've had some real successes this past year. I mean, we've had hundreds of jobs we've created. We've done that with the expansion of 3 large businesses here in this county with McKee Foods, Southern Champion Tray, and Gestamp. We've added new businesses like CC, who is a manufacturing. They're going to add hundreds of jobs. So, we've been able, because we've been willing to make some sacrifices like wearing masks. We made the sacrifices, and we've been able to keep the thing going, the economy. So,
and at the same time as remembering all that we've lost in the last year.
Yes, I mean, unfortunately, and this is really important to note. I mean, we were at about 93% of our businesses are small businesses. We lost some small businesses, and how many, I'm not really sure yet, or what percentage. But again, small businesses are huge for our economy. And again, we need to go back and focus on that young entrepreneur that wants to do a startup business and be a small business. Those are the ones that grow and end up, start with 5 people and may end up with 500. And we've watched that happen here. So, again, I mean, that's where we want to get back to.
Mr. Mayor, I thank you for your leadership.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.